Most people spend their lives chasing money. From a young age, we're taught that success means more income, more possessions, more recognition. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Money is not the goal. It never has been. It's a byproduct, a result. Those who become truly successful, those who build generational wealth and lasting influence, do something different. They start by asking a question that most avoid. Why? Why do I want to succeed? Why does this matter to me? Why am I waking up every morning to do what I do? When you start with why, you build a foundation that can't be shaken by temporary losses or market crashes. Because your purpose is not rooted in numbers, it's rooted in meaning. That's how millionaires think. Not because they're smarter or born luckier, but because they've trained their minds to focus on purpose over payoff. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people. Both are given the same opportunity. Start a business, invest their time, build something from scratch. One person jumps in because they want to make a lot of money. They dream of the house, the car, the lifestyle. The other person, they start because they believe in solving a problem. They see something broken in the world and feel compelled to fix it. They're driven not by what they can get, but by what they can give. Now fast forward 3 years. The first person, the one who chased money, is exhausted. They've burned out. The moment the profits dip, their confidence shatters. Their motivation is gone. Why? Because their fuel was external, and external things run out. The second person is different. They've also had tough days, but they're still going. In fact, they're stronger now. Their mission is clear. Their resilience is deeper. Because they were never just building a business, they were building something that matters. This is the mindset of a millionaire. It starts with purpose. Not the kind that sounds nice on a vision board, but the kind that keeps you grounded when everything else feels uncertain. When you train your mind like a millionaire, you realize that wealth isn't something you chase. It's something you attract by standing for something bigger than yourself. The world is full of people who want to be rich, but very few ask why they want it. And that question makes all the difference. If your why is weak, your effort will be weak. If your why is selfish, your growth will be limited. But if your why is deeply personal, emotionally resonant, and anchored in service, you become unstoppable. You see, when your actions are guided by purpose, you no longer need constant motivation. You don't need to be hyped up by social media or driven by comparison. You have clarity, and clarity is more powerful than hype. Think about the people who've truly changed the world. They didn't begin with spreadsheets and forecasts. They began with a belief, a deep burning conviction that what they were doing mattered. Whether they were building companies, movements, or communities, they started with why. When you start there, the how and the what follow naturally. People will often ask, what do millionaires do differently? That's the wrong question. The better question is, how do millionaires think differently? And the answer is this. They don't see money as an end game. They see it as a tool, a resource, a multiplier of purpose. If you give a millionaire $1, they don't just spend it. They use it to build, to invest, to scale their impact because they know why they're building in the first place. So ask yourself, what are you really working toward? Not the surface level answer. Go deeper. What change do you want to create? What legacy do you want to leave behind? Who will be better off because you showed up today? If the answer isn't clear yet, that's okay. It takes time. But don't skip the question. Don't let the noise of the world drown out your own voice. Because that voice, the one that whispers why this matters, is your most powerful asset. Millionaire thinking doesn't start in a bank account. It starts in the mind, and more specifically, it starts in the heart. Because when your work is aligned with your values, when your mission reflects something bigger than you gain access to something rare, consistency without burnout, passion without ego, success without regret. That's the real prize. We've all seen people reach the top and still feel empty. That's what happens when you chase outcomes without meaning. But when you begin with your why, you give yourself something money can't buy: peace of mind, direction, fulfillment. And ironically, That's when the money starts to show up. Not because you're chasing it, but because people are drawn to clarity. They're drawn to authenticity. They're drawn to individuals who stand for something. So train your mind to think like a millionaire, not by copying their strategies, but by emulating their purpose. Start with why. Revisit it often. Let it guide your decisions, fuel your discipline, and remind you of who you are when things get hard. Because the goal isn't just to be wealthy. The goal is to build wealth with meaning. And that starts by asking the most important question of all. Why does this matter to you? Answer that, and everything else starts to fall into place. Most people wait for motivation. They wait for the perfect morning, the perfect song, the perfect mood to show up. But the truth is, millionaires, those who sustain success over the long haul, don't wait. They don't depend on emotion to move. They move regardless of emotion because they've trained their minds to favor discipline over motivation. Let's be honest, motivation is fickle. It's easy to feel inspired after a powerful video or an uplifting speech, but what happens the next morning when the alarm goes off at 5 a.m.? What happens when there's no music playing, no audience cheering, no energy left in the tank? That's where discipline steps in. That's where mental training shows up. The millionaire mind isn't built in moments of excitement. It's forged in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, when it's easier to quit, when showing up requires more than desire. It requires a decision. There's a common misunderstanding that successful people are always inspired, that they jump out of bed, ready to conquer the world every single day. But that's not reality. The truth is, they're often tired, uncertain, even discouraged. The difference is, they act anyway. Because they've learned that commitment is not a feeling, it's a choice made over and over again, no matter the conditions. You see, motivation is reactive. Discipline is proactive. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the firewood. One burns bright for a moment, the other sustains the flame through storms and seasons. Millionaires don't wait for the flame to be perfect. They build it. They stack the wood, strike the match, and keep it going with consistent effort, even on the coldest days. Let me tell you about a man I met a few years ago. He started out with nothing, no connections, no investors, no silver spoon, just an idea and a willingness to do what most people wouldn't. Every morning he woke up before the sun and worked for 2 hours before his day job. Then he'd go to work, come home, and put in another 3 hours at night, not because he felt like it, but because he'd made a promise to himself. That promise wasn't emotional. It wasn't built on hype. It was rooted in clarity. He knew what he wanted to build and, more importantly, why it mattered. So he didn't wait to feel like working. He worked until it became a part of who he was. Years later, when his business took off, people called him lucky. They said he had good timing. What they didn't see were the 900 mornings when he showed up tired, the 300 nights he skipped parties, the countless times he chose progress over comfort. That's not luck. That's discipline. Millionaires understand something most people don't. Discipline isn't punishment, it's freedom. The freedom to choose long-term gain over short-term pleasure. The freedom to say no to distraction, to comfort, to excuses. When you build discipline, you build a structure around your potential. You give your dreams a home to live in. Think about an athlete. They don't train only when they feel like it. They train every day. Whether it's raining, whether they're sore, whether they slept well or not, because their performance depends on consistency. And consistency is born from discipline. The same is true for your mind. If you only work when you're inspired, you won't build anything that lasts. But if you train yourself to act, even when it's hard, you become dangerous in the best way. You become unstoppable. We live in a world addicted to the quick fix. Everyone wants the shortcut, the 30-day plan, the 3-step hack. But millionaires know that mastery takes time. Discipline isn't sexy. It's not flashy, it doesn't get applause, but it gets results. Because here's what discipline really is. It's the practice of showing up for your future self. Every time you choose discipline, you're casting a vote for the person you want to become. You're building identity, not just momentum. You're proving to yourself that your values are stronger than your impulses. There will always be days when you don't feel like it. That's part of the process. But you don't need to feel like it to do it. You just need to do it. And over time, something amazing happens. Discipline becomes natural. It becomes your default. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop looking for loopholes. You just do the work. That's how a millionaire mind operates. It doesn't ask, do I feel like it today? It asks, what would my future self thank me for today? That shift from feeling to future is everything. It's the difference between dabbling and mastery, between fleeting success and sustainable excellence. And let's be clear, discipline doesn't mean never resting. It doesn't mean grinding until you burn out. True discipline includes recovery. It includes saying no. It includes boundaries. But it's all intentional. It's not driven by emotion. It's guided by purpose. There's a phrase I love. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. Discipline is that principle in motion. It shows up in the small things, the way you treat your morning routine, the way you manage your time, the way you handle setbacks. Because how you do those things reflects how you'll handle bigger challenges when they come, and they will come. So if you want to train your mind like a millionaire, stop asking for motivation, start building discipline. Do the thing, especially when you don't feel like it. That's where strength is built. That's where confidence is earned. That's where transformation begins. Because motivation might get you started, but only discipline will keep you going. And in the end, that's what separates the dreamers from the doers, the wishers from the builders, the someday from the now. Discipline is what builds the life that motivation only talks about. The world will pressure you to think small and move fast, go viral, explode your brand, 10x in 10 days. These are the slogans of a culture that celebrates shortcuts and disrespects process. But millionaires, those who've truly built wealth that endures, they think differently. They're not playing a game that ends in a quarter or even in a year. They're playing the infinite game. And that requires a different mindset entirely. When you think long-term, you give yourself the most powerful advantage in the world. Patience with purpose, not laziness, not complacency, but strategic, intentional patience. The kind that keeps you steady when others are panicking. The kind that allows you to breathe when the numbers dip. The kind that says, I'm not just building for today, I'm building for something bigger. That mindset gives you freedom. Because when you're not chasing quick wins, you're not controlled by them either. You stop being reactive. You stop making fear-based decisions. And that's what separates someone with money from someone with a wealthy mindset. One thinks in transactions, the other thinks in trajectories. Let me give you an example. There was a man who once told me about his first real estate investment. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't flashy, a rundown duplex in a forgotten neighborhood, but he had a plan. He knew the area was developing slowly. He knew the cash flow wouldn't be impressive at first, but he didn't care. Because he wasn't buying for today, he was buying for 10 years from now. People laughed at him. Said he should have gone for a bigger, sexier deal. But 10 years later, that duplex was worth 4 times as much and the rent had doubled. Not because he was a genius, but because he was patient. Because he had vision, because he thought long-term while everyone else was flipping for the short-term dopamine hit of a quick profit. That's the difference. The millionaire mind doesn't just ask, what's profitable today? It asks, what's sustainable tomorrow? What's scalable? What creates lasting value? It's not about the rush, it's about the ripple. You see, long-term thinkers don't panic when things get hard. They don't run at the first sign of resistance. Because they expected the resistance, they planned for it. They understand that storms are part of the process, and that's why they keep going. While others stop and restart, pivot and panic, the long-term thinker simply continues, quietly, intentionally, steadily. It's a different kind of strength, one that doesn't always get applause, because it's not dramatic, it's not glamorous, it's not the kind of thing that makes headlines, but it's the kind of thing that builds empires. When you think long-term, you invest in people, you invest in relationships. You don't burn bridges for short-term wins. You build trust, slowly, consistently, because you understand that trust compounds over time, just like money does. And when things go wrong, and they will, you don't lose your head. Because your decisions weren't built on sand, they were built on rock. And you know that one moment doesn't define the whole journey. That's why long-term thinking is rare. It's not natural in a world that wants results now. It requires maturity, it requires faith, it requires the humility to say, I may not see the payoff today, I may not even see it this year, but I believe in the process, I believe in the work. And here's something else, when you think long-term, you're less distracted. You don't need to jump on every trend. You don't need to compete in every arena. You can say no more often, you can focus. Because you've already chosen your lane, you've already committed to your path. And that focus gives you power. You build your business differently, you manage your money differently, you spend your time differently. Because you're not measuring your success by how much noise you can make in the next 30 days. You're measuring it by the impact you'll make in 30 years. That kind of thinking is magnetic. People can feel it. It's calm, it's confident, it's rooted, and in a noisy, frantic world, that kind of clarity is rare, which makes it valuable. If you look at every great builder, every great leader, every great entrepreneur, what you'll find is this: they saw something other people didn't. Not because they were born with better eyes, but because they looked farther ahead. They weren't seduced by the short term. They were faithful to the long term. That's not just a strategy, that's a mindset, and it's a decision you have to make daily. It means choosing growth over gratification, vision over validation, consistency over chaos. It means learning to play the long game when everyone else is sprinting to the next shiny thing. And it means asking yourself the hard question, what am I building that will still matter in 10 years? If the answer isn't clear, step back, get quiet, reconnect with your why. Because long-term thinking doesn't come from pressure, it comes from purpose. When you know why you're building, you'll stop rushing, you'll stop comparing, you'll stop compromising your integrity for applause. You'll start making decisions that your future self will thank you for. And that's what trains your mind like a millionaire. Not just to think bigger, but to think farther. Because in a world that worships speed, your superpower is patience. In a culture obsessed with now, your edge is vision. And in a time of noise and distraction, your advantage is clarity. That's how you build wealth that lasts. Not just in your bank account, but in your character. That's how you train your mind like a millionaire. Most people are terrified of failure. They see it as the end, as a sign to stop, as proof that they're not good enough. But if you study the minds of millionaires, real ones, not just the ones with flashy cars and big talk, you'll find something radically different. They don't fear failure. In fact, they run toward it. They know something the rest of the world hasn't fully grasped. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. That truth changes everything. Because the moment you stop treating failure like something to avoid and start treating it like something to embrace, your entire relationship with growth changes. You become less reactive and more reflective, less defensive and more curious, less afraid and more alive. The millionaire mind doesn't see failure as shameful. It sees it as information. It sees it as feedback. Every misstep, every setback, every time something doesn't go as planned, it's a message. Not you're broken, not you're behind, but simply, there's something here you need to learn. Think about how a child learns to walk. They fall constantly, but no one tells them to stop trying. No one labels them as failures. We encourage them, cheer them on, even laugh with joy when they fall, because we know that falling is part of the process. Somewhere along the line, as we grow older, we forget that. We start believing that falling is failure, that falling means something is wrong with us. That belief is what holds us back, not the fall itself. Millionaires unlearn that lie. They retrain their minds to see failure as neutral, just data. They look at what went wrong, what can be improved, and they iterate. That's how innovation happens. That's how businesses evolve. That's how leaders are forged. There's a story of a woman who built a global business from scratch. What most people didn't see were the 5 businesses she tried before that all collapsed. The products that didn't sell, the partnerships that dissolved, the moments she cried alone at her kitchen table wondering if she was wasting her time, but she wasn't. Each failure refined her vision. Each mistake sharpened her instincts. And when the 6th idea finally took off, she was ready. Not because she was lucky, but because she had learned through the fall. We live in a culture that celebrates success but rarely talks about the scars behind it. Social media shows us the wins, the highlight reels, the launches, the awards. But it rarely shows us the nights filled with doubt, the silent battles, the pivots that no one claps for. And so people grow up thinking success is a straight line, that it should be fast, clean, and impressive. But the truth is it's messy, it's slow, it's often embarrassing. And that's exactly what makes it powerful. The reason millionaires learn to love failure isn't because they enjoy losing. It's because they understand what's on the other side of it. Growth, insight, strength. Every failure teaches them something that success never could. Success feels good, but failure transforms you. It humbles you. It deepens your character. It reminds you that you are still in progress and that's okay. You don't build resilience by avoiding difficulty. You build it by walking through it. And when you know that failure is just feedback, you become more daring. You take bigger swings. You stretch beyond your comfort zone, not recklessly, but courageously. This is why the greatest minds in business and leadership in any field have all failed, repeatedly, publicly, and still continued, not because they were immune to pain, but because they chose progress over perfection. Millionaires understand that failure is never final unless you decide to stop trying. The only true failure is quitting without reflection. Everything else is an experiment, a lesson, a redirection, even when failure stings. And it will. They don't take it personally. They separate their performance from their potential. Just because something didn't work doesn't mean they're a failure. It just means the method needs adjusting. It means the strategy needs tweaking. It means they are one step closer to finding what does work. And that's the key. To train your mind to extract meaning from mistakes. To ask, what did this teach me, instead of why did this happen to me? To get curious rather than discouraged. That shift in language changes everything. Because now, instead of attaching failure to identity, you attach it to process. You become a learner, not a victim. And when people see you fail and keep going, it gives them permission to do the same. That's leadership, not perfection, but perseverance. Not getting it right every time, but refusing to let fear be the loudest voice in the room. The world doesn't need more flawless people. It needs more honest people. People who are willing to fall and rise again. People who don't hide their wounds, but use them as reminders that growth is hard. And that's what makes it worth it. So if you want to train your mind like a millionaire, start here. Reframe failure. Redefine it. Learn to sit with it, study it, and rise from it. Don't rush to escape the discomfort. Sit with it long enough to extract its gift. Every failed launch, every broken deal, every missed target, it's an invitation to go deeper, to become sharper, to become wiser. Because success built on fear of failure is fragile. But success built on learning from failure is unshakable. You don't need to be perfect to succeed. You just need to be resilient. You just need to be honest. You just need to be brave enough to keep showing up, even after it didn't go your way. That's what millionaires do. They don't just bounce back, they bounce forward. And that's what turns failure into fuel. If you want to train your mind like a millionaire, you need to understand one simple truth. Your environment is stronger than your willpower. You can have the best intentions in the world, the clearest goals, the deepest why, but if you're surrounded by noise, negativity, and distraction, you will fall. Not because you're weak, but because no one can outgrow a toxic environment. Not for long. Millionaires know this. That's why they guard their space with intention. They understand that the mind is not a machine. It's a garden. Whatever you plant in it and whatever you allow around it will grow. And the question is, are you planting what you want to harvest? Every thought you think, every voice you hear, every influence you absorb, these shape your mindset, your beliefs, your sense of what's possible. And in a world filled with cynicism, comparison, and chaos, you don't stumble into clarity by accident. You create it, you protect it. Most people underestimate how much their surroundings affect their trajectory. They try to change their habits, their routines, their goals, without ever changing their environment. It's like trying to run uphill while dragging an anchor. You might make progress for a while, but eventually you slow down, you get discouraged. And if you're not careful, you quit. But the millionaire mind thinks differently. It doesn't just ask, what do I need to do? It asks, who and what do I need around me to help me become the person I'm meant to be? That's not selfish, that's strategy. Because when you're building something meaningful, you can't afford to be casual about your input. Imagine trying to grow a healthy body while living in a kitchen full of junk food. Eventually the snacks win, not because you're undisciplined, but because your environment is wired against your goals. The same is true for your mind. If you're trying to grow discipline, vision, and resilience, but you're surrounded by people who mock your dreams, who gossip, who live for the weekend, you will struggle. Energy is contagious. Belief is contagious. And so is mediocrity. Millionaires protect their energy the way others protect their money, because they know energy is a real currency. You can lose money and earn it back, but when you let your energy be drained by the wrong people or distractions, you lose your most valuable resource, momentum. You don't need toxic people to be evil or malicious, to be dangerous. Sometimes it's the subtle things. The friend who constantly doubts your goals, the colleague who always plays it safe, the family member who reminds you to be realistic. They mean well, but their fear is loud. And if you're not careful, you'll start to adopt it as your own. So what do? You get intentional, ruthlessly intentional. You start by taking inventory. Who do you spend the most time with? What content do you consume daily? What spaces do you put yourself in, physically and digitally? Then ask, do these things lift me or limit me? Do they expand my vision or shrink it? Do they challenge me to rise or tempt me to settle? And then you make changes. It doesn't mean cutting everyone off, but it does mean setting boundaries. It means curating your inputs with the same care a chef selects ingredients. Because what you feed your mind will eventually feed your choices, and your choices will shape your destiny. It means replacing gossip with growth. Replacing numbing entertainment with nourishing conversations. Replacing the constant scroll with intentional stillness. It also means finding your tribe, people who believe in you, people who are building, growing, stretching, people who don't just cheer for your wins, but challenge your excuses. You don't need a crowd, you need a circle. Even if it's just one person at first. Find people who help you think bigger, not smaller. Millionaires don't grow alone, but they don't grow anywhere either. They choose where to plant their roots. And that choice makes all the difference. There's a story I love about a man who grew up in a rough neighborhood. Drugs, violence, hopelessness everywhere. He had dreams, but no blueprint. Every time he tried to break out, something pulled him back in. Until one day, he made the hardest decision of his life. He left. Moved across the country with almost nothing. No guarantee of success. Just a belief that if he changed his environment, he could change his life. 10 years later, he owned several businesses, mentored young people, and returned to that same neighborhood, not to live, but to give, to plant seeds of hope, to show them what's possible. He didn't do that because he was special. He did it because he was intentional. Because he realized that no matter how strong your will is, the wrong environment will wear you down. But the right environment, it will water your potential. It will accelerate your growth. It will remind you who you are when you forget. Protecting your environment isn't about building walls. It's about building wisdom. It's about learning to say no, not because you're better than anyone, but because your mission matters, your future matters, and not everything deserves access to your mind. You wouldn't let just anyone walk into your home and rearrange your furniture, so why let anything, any post, any opinion, any conversation walk into your mind and rearrange your beliefs? Train your mind like a millionaire by choosing your space on purpose. Create pockets of peace, spaces where you can think clearly, where you can dream without judgment, where you can fail and still be believed in. That's not a luxury, that's a necessity. Because in a world that tries to shape you constantly, the strongest move you can make is to choose your environment intentionally, protect it, water it, and watch who you become.